Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you in the German Institute of Hygiene. I'm Matthias Dreger. I'm founder and director of this institute. Today, I would like to give you a brief introduction into the researches of Professor Dr. Awashi Katase, director of the Experimental Pathological Institute of the Medical Academy of Osaka in Japan. Professor Katase and his pupils, his colleagues, undertook a very interesting series of researches beginning in the early 20s. He undertook researches on the influence of food on the development of the growing organism. For his experiments, he used rabbits, and we will have a clear insight of what is going on if a young rabbit is, for instance, fed with sugar. I would like to step back with my own opinion. I would really like to give my voice to Professor Katase now, and I would like to present you his very interesting findings. These findings, I have to admit, have been almost forgotten in the history of science, so this is high time that we all have a close look at these findings. I will start with the introduction of his book. It is called The Influence of Nutrition on the Development of the Organism. It was published by the well-renowned medical publishing house Urban and Schwarzenberg, Berlin and Vienna, 1931. The book was published in German, but I'm lucky enough that I have English translation at hand, so I can read you the original text as written by Katase. So, to know where we are, we start with a preface. At a time when the theoretical and practical discussion of nutritional issues have moved to the forefront of interest, it is my personal need to present to the public the research that my students and I have been conducting for more than a decade in the Experimental Pathological Department of the Osaka Medical Academy. Although our experiments in this direction have not been completed yet, and further investigations are still underway, the results obtained so far deserve publication. I would be pleased if the results I have presented initiate proposals for further research so that we could succeed in promoting the questions of nutrition in its various effects on the organism in general and in particular. Berlin, March the 10th, 1931, Professor Dr. Katase. Now I would like to continue with some chapters of this book. Actually, Professor Katase, he gives a survey on the researches undertaken by himself and his pupils under his guidance. So we have here the research of the Japanese researcher S. Inouye. The title of his work is On the Influence of Carbohydrates on the Striated and the Smooth Muscular System. At the same time, a contribution to the genesis of the drop heart. It was already mentioned in the preceding paper that because of acidosis, an insufficient development of the striated muscular system could be noticed. As a result, we believed that similar phenomena should appear in other muscular organs because such organs as the heart and the organs with smooth muscles have the same functions as the striated muscles. Therefore, blood acidosis must exert in the same action on the other muscular organs as well. For this reason, I engaged Inouye to carry out corresponding research on the heart and Koyamoto research in the uterus. In these cases, we arrived at the following results. Our experimental procedure was quite simple. We added to the normal food of young growing rabbits 2 grams of cane sugar per kilogram of body weight. It's just 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. At the beginning of the experiment, we determined the weights of the experiment animals and the control animals, and we constantly controlled their weights, comparing them in the course of the experiment. We could not notice any difference of weight between the two animal groups. After that, the pectoral shape was examined, and it became evident that the thorax had a narrow-chested form, whereas the sternum showed the same changes as those already described by Katase and Baba. When opening the thorax, we could also observe the changes of the heart's shape. The heart was small and ovate. Its position was almost perpendicular to the diaphragm. Examining the heart more closely, we noticed that the heart's apex is filled almost only with the left ventricle, whereas the right ventricle clings to the left one and is remarkably reduced. That's why the heart seems to be formed almost symmetrically and looks like a falling drop of water. I would like to show you this in a picture. This is the heart of the healthy rabbit, and this is a so-called drop heart which Inouye found out in the rabbit, which was fed with 2 grams sugar per kilogram body weight. Of course, everybody can see this is a degenerated heart. This control rabbit had a weight of 1.8 kilograms, and this rabbit, which was used in the experiment, had a weight of 2,100 grams. So this rabbit with a small degenerated heart was even heavier than the healthy control rabbit. Then we put the heart into a measuring cylinder in order to determine its volume, and noticed that the diseased animal's heart was considerably smaller than that of the control animals. After the removal of the blood clot, the heart's weight was determined, and the result was a significant difference between that of the experiment animals and that of the control animals, which came almost to 20%. Because of the results, we should like to call the present heart a small heart, or rather drop heart, or drop-shaped heart. During the histological examination, we could notice furthermore that the cardiac muscle fibers of the experiment animals, compared to those of the control animals, were extraordinarily small. With the specimen produced with Sudan 3 coloring, a larger number of fat drops could be noticed in the experiment animals' hearts than in those of the control animals. Here once more the figures as they come in the book of Professor Katase. I can read you the original lines. This is the normal heart of a healthy rabbit weighing 1,830 grams. The drop heart of a rabbit being fed on sugar for 2 months weighing 2,140 grams. The normal heart of a healthy rabbit weighing 1,350 grams. And here, the drop heart of a rabbit being fed on sugar for 2 months weighing 1,325 grams. The feeding of sugar, as mentioned, was 2 grams per kilogram body weight. Summary. When a young growing rabbit is being fed with sugar for a certain time, 2 months, one can observe the development of a small or drop heart. From that one can conclude that the cause of the small or the drop heart is a result of blood acidosis going on for a certain time. The small or drop heart is not of congenital nature, but can be acquired by acidosis going on for a certain time. So this was a summary of the researches of Katases pupils S. Inouye. After that, we have second research by his pupil Koyama. Katase asked Koyama to make research on the development of the uterus of a female rabbit when fed with sugar. So here is the summarization in the words of Professor Katase. Koyama on the influence of blood acidosis on the development of the uterus of young growing rabbits. At the same time, a contribution to the genesis of the infantile uterus. This research was given as a lecture to the Medical Society of Osaka in 1930. Professor Katase continues in his summary. The experiment procedure was the same as in the preceding work paper. Young growing female rabbits were fed with cane sugar for a certain time. Koyama was able to establish that the uterus of the young growing rabbits till the time of puberty went through an insufficient development, and that the uterus length only attained half of its normal size. I repeat this. And that the uterus length only attained half of its normal size, and its weight fell behind 1/5 up to 1/10 as compared with the control animal. I show you this in an original photograph of Professor Katases' book. Here you see the uterus of the normal rabbit, and here you see half the size, the uterus of the experimental rabbit. Yeah? And most striking actually for us is when you make a cut here through the tissue of the uterus, you see here, this is a tissue, the tissue of the normal, healthy female rabbit. And this here, that's what is left from the experimental female rabbit, which was fed with 2 grams sugar per kilogram body weight. You can easily see that this is a really an elementary damage to the organism of the growing rabbit. And I can only suggest once this rabbit is grown up, if this female rabbit is not able to get children, then the main reason may be because it was fed with this sugar. I continue with the summary. If the experiments continue up until the time of puberty, the difference between the experimental animals and the control animals is not so great. Nevertheless, even then, certain remarkable differences should be noticed. The uterus seemed to be paler, macroscopically, than that of the control animals, which would suggest apparent anemia. An insufficient development of the uterus wall, especially of the corpus, was established histologically. On account of these findings and the insufficient development of the uterus, in this case one can speak of an infantile uterus. Yeah, just what I showed to you. He explained these pictures. Summary. First, if young growing female rabbits are fed on cane sugar for a certain time, one notices an insufficient development of the uterus. Second, this uterus is much smaller than that with the control animals, and it decreases in size and weight and appears to be anemic. Third, we wish to designate this an infantile uterus. Fourth, therefore, the infantile uterus is not of a congenital nature, but must be regarded as acquired through nutritional disorder. Wrong eating habit, for instance, as it comes to humans, especially through blood acidosis. I would like to explain the figures once more with the words of Professor Katase. 2 uterus shapes of rabbits from the same litter. Yeah, this is important. These rabbits were from the same mother. A, the normal uterus of a normally developed rabbit. B, the infantile uterus of a rabbit fed on sugar. Figure 72. the uterus of a normally developed rabbit. Number 73. The uterus of a rabbit fed on sugar. All layers of the uterus wall underdeveloped and retarded. After these findings at Professor Katase and his colleagues, the question arose at which amount of sugar will these findings be seen in the experimental rabbit. So he asked for a special examination on this special question. After these researches at Professor Katase and his pupils, the question arose at which amount of sugar given to the experimental rabbit will this degeneration of organs be determined. At this stage of the findings at Professor Katase and his pupils, the question arose how much sugar we need to give to the experimental rabbit to provocate this degeneration in the young growing rabbit. So Professor Katase asked his pupil Tsuzuki to undertake such researches. Professor Katase summarizes the result of these experiments. Suzuki, experimental studies to determine the minimum amounts of sugar and the duration of the effect in producing alimentary bone changes in rabbits. Published in Igakwai in Osaka 1926. Suzuki fed rabbits with 0.25, 0.5, 1.0 and 1.5 cane sugar per kilogram of body weight and killed one rabbit of each group after 2 days and examined them for bone changes. Summary. It was found that animals fed on an additional amount of sugar for a longer period of time suffered from osteoporosis and progressive bone changes. The feeding of young growing rabbits with 0.25 of cane sugar did not produce any histological changes in the bone system. On feeding with 0.5 gram of cane sugar, histological changes already became visible on the 7th day. When feeding with 1.0 gram of cane sugar, this already appeared on the 4th day, and with 1.5 gram already on the 3rd day. This is really striking result. So the damage done by sugar, giving small amounts of sugar to the experimental rabbit, is really very, very little. Yeah. You see that the results begin on feeding with 0.5 gram of cane sugar. The sequence of the histological changes that occurred was as follows. Initially, hyperemia was observed in the bone marrow. Then a narrowing of the epiphytic joints, a shortening of the cartilage columns, an extension of the Haversian channels, and finally a degradation of the bone marrow. A closer look at the results of the work reveals the harmful effects of cane sugar on the bone system of young growing rabbits, which occur quickly and depend on the amount of sugar administered. The above facts show that the harmful effects of cane sugar on the bone system of the growing young rabbit is extremely rapid, depending on the amount administered. Thus, 0.25 gram per kilo body weight remains completely harmless. On the other hand, 0.5 gram per kilo body weight can already have a toxic, it is acidogenic effect. Therefore, if 0.3 gram per kilo of the body weight is considered harmless in the rabbits, and if the resistance of humans to sugar is exactly the same as that of rabbits, 5 to 6 years old children of about 20 kilo body weight could tolerate a quantity of sugar of only 6.0 gram without damage. Please let me repeat this important statement of Professor Katase. Therefore, if 0.3 gram per kilo of the body weight is considered harmless in rabbits, and if the resistance of humans to sugar is exactly the same as that of rabbits, 5 to 6 years old children of about 20 kilo body weight could tolerate a quantity of sugar of only 6 gram without any damage. The cakes and sweets made in cities generally contain too much sugar. One could almost see an explanation here for the fact that today's children who consume too much sugar daily, especially in larger cities, often seem to be physically weak, it is asthenic. I would like to stress the striking fact which can be regarded as a byproduct of advanced civilization. So, these were a brief introduction into the researches of Professor Katase and his scholars. We would now like to give you a brief introduction of how does this result look in our daily life. I mean, I'm talking to you as a parent, as parents of children. What does this mean that the maximum, the maximum content of sugar you may your child allow to take per day is 6 grams. I will show you about an example. Here we have this Mars Riegel. The Mars Riegel has a content of sugar of 61 gram per 100 kilogram. So let's please make a calculation. So what do these findings, these researches of Professor Katase and his team mean for the daily life? What does it mean for your children? I would like to make a calculation. A Mars Riegel like this has a weight of 45 grams. So this is 45. If we would like to know how much sugar is in this Mars Riegel, we need to multiply this with the factor 61 gram sugar per 100. So this is multiplied times 0.61 6.1. So you see, one Maßregel, in this one Maßregel we have 27 grams of sugar. Yes, and this is how it looks like in reality. When you give a Maßregel to your child, this is the amount of industrial white sugar that your child will actually eat. And this is, believe me, this will not do very good for your child. And please keep in mind that this amount of sugar is the daily maximum what a child can take. If it takes more than this of the white sugar, then you can be quite sure that the process of degeneration will start. We just calculated that in this 45 gram Maßregel we have an amount of 27 something gram of sugar. Yeah, it is this amount of industrial sugar. So when we take the findings of Professor Katase, which gives us a limit of maximum 6 gram industrial sugar per day for a child of 20 kilograms body weight, this means that from this Maßregel it is actually 1/3 of this regel. I'll show you how much that will be. We have here this Maßregel. This would be about half. So this is a quarter, and this piece of the Maßregel already contains 6 gram of pure white industrial sugar, and this piece is the maximum daily intake for a child in order not to get damages, degenerations in its organs. Yeah. If you, dear parents, if you see this, you can clearly understand that the best way to come along with this problem with industrial white sugar is to just stay away from any of these sweets. You will find out that in the long run this is the most easiest solution for you. If you ask for alternatives, you can give in between, you can give your child some kind of fruits, for instance. Yeah? Why not give some piece of banana or some apple or a pear to your child? They will like this. Yeah. If you don't spoil their taste with something like a burning hot stuff for their taste, then they will really like the natural food. And this is the best fundament you can give for your growing child. Yeah. For instance, a child not only gets a sweet, yeah, it may drink a Coca-Cola. Let's see how much is 6 gram of sugar in a Coca-Cola. a Coca-Cola contains per 100 milliliter 10.6 grams of sugar. So the amount which contains 6 grams of sugar is just 60 milliliters. So this is a maximum daily dose of white industrial sugar that your child may take. As a conclusion of all this, dear parents, there's only one really good and healthy way for your child, and this is the solution to just stay away from all this. Stay away from the Mars Regals, stay away from the Coca-Cola, stay away from the sweets. At this administration, at this pedagogical approach, you have the most easiest way to get away from all these dangers. I can tell you from my own childhood, my mother was really strict about it. White flavor, white sugar, it was strictly prohibited when we were children. Her strategy was zero. We did not get any biscuits. We did not get chocolate. It was just zero. And I'm very thankful for my mother that she educated us in this way, because we did not develop any need. We did not develop any urge to have these sweets or sugars. I can remember when we made an excursion with our class. We walked in the forest, and the classmate, he had a little packet of Haribo, with him, and he offered me and say, "Hey, you want a Haribo?" I say, "No, thank you. I have my bread with me. I don't need." And at the end of the day, this boy actually he finished the whole box of his Haribo, and I was just happy without it, and it was really a very good fundament for my organism. My mother also let us have our own garden, and we were fed with vegetables which were biologically grown. Biodynamic vegetables according to Rudolf Steiner, and these minerals these vegetables had a much better mineralization than the vegetables you normally can buy in the supermarket. But this is another issue. I would like to give you some more samples of what is actually inside the sweets that you or the nice aunts and the nice relatives give to your children. Let me show you. This, for instance, is the so-called Haribo confect. This is a 500 gram package, and this 500 grams has 300 grams of industrial sugar in it. So this is actually what the child will eat if you give some stuff like this for it. This has to be kept out of the way, out of the reach of children actually. Then we have this so-called children's chocolate. But believe me, this is not something you should give to your child, because here is also a lot of sugar in it. In 100 grams you have 53 grams of sugar. Yeah. So this is the amount of white industrial sugar which you have in this so-called children's chocolate. And when I look at this chocolate, someone can become really angry. Yeah. You see here that the German Football Association, yeah, makes a promotion for this chocolate. Here you see Mr. Mario Götze, for instance, yeah, famous German football player. Yeah. He's promoting chocolate. But I can tell you, there is a strict rule with the German national football team. The German football teams, they are not allowed to eat cake. They have a strict rule by the trainer not to eat cake. So this is something like which blows my mind. You see, those people who really are idiots in Germany, yeah, they are really professional football players, and they don't hesitate to give their name to promote chocolate, children's chocolate for children, which contain more than 50% of sugar. You see here, I would like to repeat, you have here the heart of the healthy rabbit. Here you have the heart of the experimental rabbit, which was fed with 2 grams sugar per kilogram body weight for 3 months. Here you have another group. You have here the heart of the healthy rabbit. This rabbit was fed for 2 months with 2 grams. No, this was not fed. This one was fed with 2 grams per kilogram body weight for 2 months. So you see the difference, and you see that these hearts from the healthy rabbit, they are asymmetrically, you know, like they actually should be, because the normal heart of the rabbit is like this, it's unsymmetrically. And here you see the heart has taken a drop-like form, like a water drop. And here we see the same results with the uterus. Here you see the uterus of the normal healthy rabbit. And here you see the degenerated uterus. Professor Katase calls this the infantile uterus. This rabbit was fed with 2 grams sugar per kilogram body weight just for 2 months. If we make a cut here in the tissues, we get these results. Here, the cut at the healthy rabbit show a developed tissue, shows a very good developed structure. The cut here at the infantile uterus of the rabbit, which was fed with 2 grams of cane sugar per kilogram body weight, it shows like this. And I think everybody of you can see that here between the experimental rabbit and the healthy rabbit, this is a remarkable, it's really a striking difference. And you can imagine if you interpolate, if you convert these findings from the rabbits to the human beings, you will get most likely the same results, or as a human beings it may be even worse than this, yeah? Because, and you will agree on this, your child is not a rabbit, right? And you don't want that your child becomes an experimental child, right? Yeah? So please avoid this intake of sugar. And based on these findings of this experimental pathological institute under the direction of Professor Katase in Japan from the 30s, we have something like, it's more than a recommendation, it's something like we say we need make a striking warning on the sweets which are intended by the sugar industry for children. We need to tell the people, tell the parents what happens if they give this kind of white industrial sugar to their children. Let me show you an example how our intention for a future development, for a future design of sweets shall look like. We see here the results of the researches of Professor Katase. The heart of the healthy rabbit, this is the heart, the so-called drop heart of the experimental rabbit. These rabbits were fed with 2 grams of sugar per kilogram body weight. This is another group. This is the heart of the healthy rabbit, and this is the degraded heart of the experimental rabbit. And what we need to do, as like in the cigarette packages, we need to put a warning for the parents on the chocolate. We need to show them, hey, if you give chocolate to your children, then the heart of your child will degenerate to this kind of heart. Yeah. Here you have the present day design of a so-called children's chocolate as being sold here in Germany. Yeah. You see here a smiling, happy young boy with perfect white teeth. Yeah. And this is something like, it's a lie. Yeah. If you give chocolate to your children, the children will get, in many cases, develop caries, and even worse, it will develop degeneration of its organs. So the backside of such chocolate should please look like this. Yeah. Here you still have what is inside the chocolate, and here, and this is an important new design, here you have the clear warning to the parents. What does sugar do to the inner organs of the child. We are not talking just about teeth. You know? Forget about the teeth. You know? The teeth you can repair, but a degenerated drop heart you can not repair. And even if Professor Katases says that during the growth of the rabbit into maternity, these degenerations become less. And if you give chocolate to your female child, then uterus will degenerate to this size. I also made a draft based on these findings. Yeah, the draft for the chocolate, the so-called children's chocolate, could look like this. And to my understandings, these warnings are much more important than the warnings for cigarettes. Why? Because when a grown-up smokes, when he buys cigarettes, he knows what he's doing. But the child who's given chocolate by his or her mother believes that this is good, and the child can not choose. It doesn't have a chance to choose to take the chocolate or not. And very often, the parents make a big mistake to give the sweets as a kind of, how to say, a kind of reward, yeah? A reward for the child if the child was nice, so it gets a sweet. This is completely wrong, believe me. Yeah? You something like you train the child that the sweets are corresponding to happiness and success. You know? But you are really doing harm for your child. So please, what we can do is to make common attempts that the sweets, chocolates and biscuits and stuffs like Haribo and Coca-Cola, yeah, that they get a warning on the package which is just fair to the children. Dear parents, ladies and gentlemen, I like to thank you for your attention to the presentations of these findings, for the presentation of the researches of Professor Katase. I'm very thankful that Professor Awashi Katase and his scholars undertook these long-term researches in this Institute of Experimental Pathology in Japan. These researches allows us today to have a clear understanding about the damage that industrial sugar does to the growing child. I have a question for you. Do you want actually that in some stadium of the development your child comes along with a heart like that? Do you really want this? I think no, you don't want. And I'm a father of 2 children. One child is 2 years and another child is 3.5 years. and I'm very strict about it, and I keep away every industrial sugar from my beloved children. And I can only recommend you, if you do want something, do good for your child, please just do the same. Keep away the industrial sugar, and this will be the best you can do for the development of your healthy child. Yeah. So I hope that you got some new information on the presentation of the findings of Professor Katase and his team. And I would like to thank you for your attention. I would also like to thank to Professor Katase and his team, who made such serious attempts for all these researches for more than a decade, for more than 100 researches and experiments, to present such result to the world. Thank you very much.